Now I move on to the 10-minute rule motion. Ten-minute rule motion, and I call Jessica Morden.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. I beg to move that leave be given to bring in a bill to require the Secretary of State to commission and publish a review of the legislation and guidance relating to e-scooters, to place a duty on the Secretary of State to promote public awareness of legislation relating to the use of e-scooters and for connected purposes. Almost 2 years to the day since I brought the first debate to this House on the anti-social use of e-bikes and e-scooter, and it's quite pertinent to follow the statement today from the Minister, and I too would be interested in a trial area, just getting that in there, trial order. I'm introducing this bill today to highlight an issue of much concern to many constituents in Newport East who frequently raise with me the anti-social use and sometimes dangerous use of e-scooters and in fact e-bikes as well. And I'd like to thank those residents and those Newport councillors, particularly in hotspot areas in my constituency, for talking to me about it. As we've all seen, the landscape on our roads has changed dramatically over recent years. The use of e-scooters has exploded, and it was estimated last year that e-scooter ownership is now close to 1 million in England alone. But legislation has just not kept up with this trend. Our legislation is years behind other countries. The bill is about asking the government to address this quickly, and I know there have been positive moves about this. And also, as we approach Christmas, when many people may be tempted to buy them as presents to remind potential buyers of the law. It's fair to say from the outset that there clearly is a place for e-scooters in the transport mix. They can play a really positive role in increasing transport choice while reducing pollution and congestion, particularly important too for young people with lower spending power and car ownership. As one of my constituents put it, I use one as a disabled person. I find it easier than a mobility scooter. I'm reluctant to go out and about more for fear of losing it. It is a cheap form of transport for the low paid, and safety will only improve with legislation. However, for many, e-scooters are a source of great anxiety. As I said earlier, many people raise this with me, including groups like the Scouts, local Scout groups, and many others. And recently, I asked constituents more widely for their thoughts, and here are some of their quotes. Some of the people riding these scooters and e-bikes have no regard for other people or the elderly, said one. Well, one other said the majority ruin it for the few that use them correctly. They are frequently used for blatant drug running and by people who have zero concern for pedestrian or driver safety. An older resident wrote to me, told me of his experience at nearly 75 recently of nearly getting knocked over whilst walking her dog, which really frightened her. Well, another said, my boy is a full-time wheelchair user. I've lost count of the amount of times we've nearly collided with e-bikes and scooters travelling at speed on pavements. And from another resident, unfortunately, they're often used for drug runs. Riders have masks, no helmets, and cut over the roundabout at the bottom of Somerton Bridge with no due care and attention to other drivers and pedestrians. And of course, we should consider the impact on the visually impaired. This is often highlighted by the RNIB, and I mentioned them certainly in a previous debate that I've held on this. These are complaints from constituents who live in Newport, where e-scooter use is illegal. It's illegal because e-scooter usage is only legal on our roads and cycleways as part of a public hire scheme where a trial is taking place. Trials have been running in locations in England since 2020, none in Wales and Scotland, I know, where I believe there was a lack of consultation by the last government with devolved governments. There are currently 19 locations where trials are active, and if you hire a scooter as part of the trial, there are restrictions including on weight, speed, up to 50 miles an hour max. They have to have lights, you have to have a valid driving licence, and the hire scheme operator must have motor vehicle insurance policy. They must meet some legal requirements. But beyond these hire schemes, whilst the sale of e-scooters is legal, using a privately owned e-scooter on public land, including on roads, pavements and cycle routes, is illegal and can lead to prosecution. Despite this legal position, sales have just rapidly increased. And the problem is, because they're unregulated, there are no limits on speed, with some sale online capable of being tampered with or reaching up to 60 miles an hour, no requirements for them to have lights, sound or any audible alert system, or people to wear helmets, no available insurance, nor requirements around their maintenance and no restrictions on their weight, with some e-scooters reported to weigh up to 70 kilograms. These are clearly not toys, and when collisions occur, victims can face serious injuries, and it's the Motor Insurance Bureau who pick up the bill for any compensation, thereby pushing up motor insurance premiums for all. In 2023, from which the most recent figures are available, there are almost 1,300 collisions involving e-scooters and 6 deaths. And I know it's an issue that's raised with many honourable members, including my honourable friend for Birmingham, Hall, Green and Moseley, who's had a particular issue of an accident recently. There's also the issue of toxic lithium battery fires, with an e-bike or e-scooter fire once every 2 days in London in 2023. As the Minister said in a Westminster Hall debate before the election, it's often the result of unregulated e-scooters bought from retailers abroad, which fail to meet UK safety standards. And on that point, I strongly welcome the Government's commitment to introduce a product safety metrology bill to address the fire risk. I also welcome confirmation this week from the Home Secretary and Ministers regarding the implementation of one of Labour's manifesto pledges that the Government will strengthen the law around vehicles used for antisocial behaviour so they can be seized when such behaviour occurs without the police having to go through a lengthy process of issuing multiple warnings that delay action. And I do very much want to thank Gwent Police, who in tough circumstances are doing what they can to crack down on this and have success in seizing a number of e-scooters and e-bikes engaged in antisocial behaviour and criminality, particularly drug dealing. The penalties can include confiscation, £300 fines, 6 points on your licence and a criminal record. They've also taken the lead with social media campaigns around Christmas, and I would welcome more backup from the DFT and Home Office in enforcement and in public awareness campaigns, particularly in the run-up to Christmas. And this very much forms part of today's bill. Because buying online is easy. Just a cursory search brings up very well-known high street retailers who do display reasonably prominent disclaimers, but then go on to describe the e-scooter as the perfect fit for daily commuting and that you can get wherever you need to get to without hassle. Lesser-known retailers often hide the disclaimers or don't have one at all and sell e-scooters capable of reaching 40, 50, 60 miles, even 60 miles per hour. So, as well as raising awareness about the current law, I'm asking the Government to review where we are now after nearly 5 years of trials with a view to legislating. Trials are just that, tests. In 2022, the last government promised to introduce a transport bill, but it never came, and e-scooter trials were extended this year before the election for a 4th time till May 2026. This leaves us one of the last few European countries not to have legislated on this. I therefore welcome the Secretary of State committing just a fortnight ago to look ahead for opportunities to include much needed and long overdue legislation. And in considering their options, I know ministers will hear and listen and consider the experiences and recommendations of key stakeholders like the police, perhaps looking or have suggested, as it currently stands, at looking at stricter penalties and restrictions on sales or imports, or like Sustrans, who asked for tighter regulation of e-scooter construction and specification, perhaps on speed, weight, safety requirements, as well as cooperation to solve pavement parking issues. So it's on this basis of these experiences, suggestions and of course the trial data that this bill asks that the existing legislation and guidance be reviewed and public awareness raised to provide a clear, settled and long-term legislative solution to the challenges as well as the opportunities e-scooters present, so that we can make our roads safer for riders, pedestrians and other road users, and I urge colleagues to support it.
Yeah. Question is that the honourable member have leave to bring in the bill. As many of that opinion say aye. Aye. The contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Who will prepare and bring in the bill?
Jill German, Alex Barras-Curtis, Catherine Fuchs, Tonya Antoniazzi, Ruth Jones, Steve Witherden and myself, Madam Deputy Speaker.
Jessica Morden. Straight as she comes.
E-scooters Review and Awareness Bill.
Second reading, what day?
14th of March 2025.
You hesitated, but we're saying the 14th of March 2025.
Yes.